members, welcome to South Staff's Planning Committee. I'll start by saying to remind members that this meeting is being recorded tonight, and I'd like to introduce the top table. I'm the Chairman of Planning Committee, Councillor Bob Cope.
And Vice Chair, Councillor Robert Duncan.
Hardip Sharma, and I'm the legal advisor to the committee tonight. Helen Bembo, Development Management Team Manager.
Tom Nutt, Assistant Team Manager, Development Management.
Thank you. Firstly, then we go to item 1, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Can I have approval for the minutes of the last meeting being correct? Thank you. Item 2, apologies. Do we have any apologies?
Chairman, I have apologies from Councillors Ashley and Chapman.
Thank you. And item 3, declarations of interest. Councillor Reid. Can you put your mic?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for reminding me. I'm declaring an interest in 23/00A980, and we'll leave the meeting while it's being discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. So we now move to item 4, which is determination of the planning applications. I'm going to pass over to Ellen on the first one, which is 23/00558 FUL, Top Barn Farm, Kiddymore Green Road, Bishopswood. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The site extends to around 1.78 acres and consists of a traditional farmstead set within arable farmland. The site is in a rural area approximately 0.6 miles east of Bishopswood village. This proposal consists of several elements, which are, in summary, the conversion and extension of the threshing barn, which is shown on this plan in front of you. This plan just shows an aerial view of the existing site, and some of these buildings, as shown, will be converted, some will be demolished. So the threshing barn is to be converted into a 5-bed dwelling, which will be the main residence. And there will also be an extension to this, which will be an L shape and will sit on the footprint of the barrelled oak roof shed, which is building A2 shown here. Conversion of the existing derelict farmhouse at the front of the site into a 2-bed guest house to include the demolition of the brick structures adjoining either end. Conversion of the long thin agricultural building, shown here as B2, at the front of the site into a residential outbuilding to accommodate a recreation room, water treatment plant and biomass plant. Conversion of the existing building into a garden room, which is stable C, and then the demolition of the modern agricultural sheds shown centrally on this slide, as well as the vaulted shed and the Dutch barn. So this plan shows you the existing site on the left-hand side and as proposed on the right. So on the left-hand side, everything in red is to be demolished and everything in green is to be retained. The site is within the Greenbelt, where there is a presumption against inappropriate development. The conversion of the existing brick buildings on the site is considered to comply with Greenbelt policy. However, the extensions to the dwelling are disproportionate to the original and therefore considered inappropriate in principle. However, there is an extant approval under the General Permitted Development Order for the conversion of these buildings into 5 dwellings. This consent is capable of being implemented and is a fallback position and needs to therefore be given considerable weight in the planning balance. The current application proposes the use of the entire complex as one residential development and is considered to be a significant improvement on the fallback scheme, again, which is of 5 separate dwellings. There would also be no greater impact on the openness, functional, visual amenity of the Greenbelt than the fallback scheme. In addition, the proposal would involve the reinstatement of an attractive brick threshing barn and several other traditional brick buildings, which are considered to be undesignated heritage assets. The scheme would bring them back into viable use and secure their long-term conservation, also consisting of high-quality design of materials. It's considered that the fallback scheme provides a compelling case for very special circumstances, which ought to be afforded significant weight and clearly outweighs any potential harm. So I'm just going to show you some plans and some photos of the area and some of the buildings that will be retained and which ones will be demolished. So this is the conversion of the main residence on the site, which will be the main living quarters. Then we have a proposed guest house. Again, this won't be let or rented off separately. It will be for visiting members of the family. And then we have a garden room, which again would be ancillary to the main development itself. So on the left-hand side here, we've got the former farmhouse, and this will be converted into the guest house. The buildings you can see either side, the single-storey parts will be demolished. And this is a view looking along the access track. And what you can see there on the right-hand side is the neighbouring property. So we've got the lean-to extensions again on the left-hand side photograph here, and the barn in the rear. All of that is to be demolished. And on the right-hand side here, only the brick building that you can see in the foreground will remain. The left-hand side photo shows you the views beyond the site towards the northeast. And on the right-hand side, both of these premises will be demolished. The one on the right-hand side will be the area for the footprint for the main house extension. Again, this brick building in the centre, you can see there will be converted into the garden room. And the larger one on the right-hand side is the agricultural buildings, again, to be demolished. This is a view of the threshing barn in the centre here of the photo on the right-hand side. As you can see at the moment, it's dilapidated. There's parts of this gable wall falling away and the roof has fallen away. This will be reinstated and form part of the main residence. This will be the garden room located here. And this is the agricultural barn in the distance, which will be demolished, as will this portion here. And again, left-hand side photo showing the Dutch barn to be removed, and this part here will be converted. So in conclusion, there will be no undue harm to the openness, function or visual amenity of the Greenbelt as a result of the proposal, and there are no concerns arising in respect of heritage assets, ecology, residential amenity, flooding or highway safety. Overall, when taking all these matters into account, the balance is in favour of the scheme and approval is recommended subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellen. We have one speaker speaking for, and that's Mr. McHale. Would you go to the rostrum, please? Mr. McHale, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
So I'd like to start by saying that this is a family home, and if we were to get permission, we'll live there for the rest of our lives. It isn't a development to sell on afterwards. I have a wife, a 1-year-old boy, and another one on the way. We both come from big families. I'd like to carry that on, and this is partly the reason for wanting to build with the number of bedrooms that are in the plans. The barns are situated close to Black Ladies Priory. That's where my parents live. My sister lives next door to them. As you know, they are a non-designated heritage asset and badly in need of saving. We've worked closely with our architects and planning officer to enhance and save the building while focusing on a quality build and making it a home that we can grow and live in for many years. We are keeping as much of the original barn as we can, and where sections need rebuilding, it will be in keeping with the current barn. If we are to gain planning permission, this isn't part of the what we're asking for, but if we are to gain planning permission, then we'll also undertake a redevelopment of the surrounding land, where we'll essentially make it a haven for wildlife and allow nature to do its thing. To back this up, you only need to look at what has been done around on the land around the Black Ladies, and also see how well it's been received in the local community. We have a public footpath that runs along the bottom of the field, and instead of a farmed field, we will be able to see the wildlife and the barns. As is it Helen? Sorry, has already said, we'll be demolishing some of the ugly modern barns as well that block the view. So altogether, we're building a family home that will have the threshing barn as its centrepiece, saving a great old building from ruin and turning some 40-odd acres of farmland over to nature. And finally, in my opinion, I think we're respecting and enhancing the history of the site and its links to the Black Ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McHale. Local members, councillor Holmes and Sutton, do you wish to make a comment?
Only that we're aware of how much hard work has gone into presenting us with this plan here tonight, and I can't see anything against it at all.
Councillor Sutton?
I echo councillor Holmes, but also reserve my right to speak in debate.
So members, it's over to members. Does anybody want to start the discussion? No? Councillor Bob Hargis.
I'm just looking at the representation from Mr Brown in discussion about parking bays. Was there any conditions or mitigation that was put in to answer that?
Ellen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there was some concerns raised by the adjacent property, which I showed in one of the photographs earlier on. With regard to the access, it's a shared access, as you can imagine, from the main highway to this premises that we're looking at this evening and the neighbour. We have tidied up the application in as far as is possible within the planning remit in order to safeguard access and make sure that it is appropriate in terms of parking and access for vehicles that will be necessary. Some of the points that were raised were falling under the issue of a civil matter between the two parties, but we've certainly addressed as many concerns as possible through the planning process. Thank you.
Happy with that? Okay. Does anybody else wish? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Can the officers say what the biodiversity net gain might be on this and what protection regarding bats and birds and that, please?
Ellen?
Yeah, through you, Chair. All the relevant protected species surveys have been undertaken and any mitigation that's required will be secured by condition. In terms of BNG, biodiversity net gain, this application predates the BNG uplift of a minimum of 10% being a prerequisite. As Councillor Holmes has alluded to, it's been a long time in the making to get it to an appropriate position. So we can't mandate that on this application because it predates the legislation. But there is certainly a willingness, as you've heard, on the landowner's part to be able to progress that, but we can't secure it in this application given its date.
Sorry, Chair, so we can't put it as a condition? Thank you.
No, it wouldn't be reasonable given the fact that legislative change happened after the submission of the application. But thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. To me, I think this application has been thought a lot of sympathy, and I agree with the ward members, the comments they've made. And indeed, in 2.3.7, it says that it's worthy of note that the development has been designed by an architect specialising in schemes involving historic building conservation, which and is considered that this reflects in the quality and the design and the materials proposed. So that, to me, is very, very favourable.
Thank you. Any more speakers? No. In that case, I'll put the opposition to the vote. All those in favour of the recommend. Who wants to speak? Sorry, we thought somebody wanted to speak. So I'm putting the recommendation to you. The recommendation is to approve. Can I have all those in favour of approval, please? Okay. Anyone against? And are there any abstentions? No, that's unanimous. It's approved. Thank you. We next come to the next item. I'll wait for the screen to come up. It's okay. Right, the next item is item application number 23-00980 FULM, and this is land to the rear of Ollybush, Ebbsbury Road, Treacle. Over to you, Ellen. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just take you through the application. Planning permission is sought for a battery energy storage system together with ancillary infrastructure, security fencing, access, landscaping and biodiversity enhancements. As we go to the next slide, You can see the location plan there. The site measures 1.28 hectares in area and comprises a rectangular shaped field that formed the beer garden and paddock to the rear of the Hollybush Inn, which closed in early 2020. The building and car park lie to the north of the site, fronting Ebbstree Road, and the site slopes gradually down north to south. The site is bordered by native species hedgerows and an internal mature Leylandii hedgerow. Overhead power lines cross the southern part of the site with pylons to the south, west and northwest. If we move forward in the slides, we have a look at the photos. Keep going. Yeah, look at the photos. So as you can see there, that's the Ebbstree Road. You can see the Hollybush Inn there, and the application site is on the left-hand side, and that's where the new access would be situated. Go to the next slide, and that's looking southeast across the site. Under the sort of branch of that tree on the left is the Penn substation, although you probably can't see it on there. And then you've got the pylons and that, but that's looking south. And then the next slide shows the site looking north from sort of the middle sort of area of the site, and that's the Hollybush Inn, as you can see up there. And you can see the site slopes from the south. In terms of the wider area, adjacent to the east, south and west of the site is agricultural land. Beyond that, the Staffordshire and Worcestershire Canal and the Penn substation are to the east, around 400 to 500 metres away. The nearest residential properties are situated around 350 metres to the west of the site on Ebbstree Road and Treacle Holloway. We go to the site layout plan. As you can see there, the proposal would have sufficient capacity to store around 49.9 megawatts of energy. The connection to the existing Penn substation to the east would be made via a cable connection to a nearby pylon. As you can see, the pylons were running throughout the southern part of the site there. The proposed BESS would comprise battery containers and associated plant and buildings, as you can see on the drawing there. You can see the parallel batteries towards the south of the site. The height of these buildings would vary. For the battery units would be around 2.5 metres. Substation structures would measure around 6.5 metres in height. And there's a couple of slides just showing the elevations of those structures there. So that's the battery units, much like a sort of shipping container size. And that is the substation, which whilst are kind of more open looking in nature, they are greater in height at 6.5 metres. The buildings and structures would be enclosed by a steel palisade weld mesh fence measuring 2.5 metres in height. The surfacing between buildings and structures would comprise permeable gravel. Existing trees would be retained with additional planting in the form of new hedgerow, 83 metres in length, shrub planting and new grassland, which is 187 square metres, and existing grassland areas would be enhanced. Other biodiversity enhancement measures such as bird boxes, bat boxes and hibernacula would also be provided. A swale will be created to the south of the battery substation compound. A new access would be formed from Ebbstree Road with the proposed track splitting into two, creating a circular route through and around the battery compound. 2 parking spaces would be provided outside the compound. I should move on to the planning assessment. With regard to the key planning considerations, Core Policy 1, the spatial strategy, aims to direct growth towards the most sustainable or accessible and sustainable locations within the district, which are the main service villages. The site is within a rural area outside a service village and is not therefore intended for growth. However, given the nature of the proposal and the extent of land needed, it is unlikely that locating a battery energy storage facility within a main service village would be feasible or desirable. Sites within or adjacent to built-up areas are prioritised by developers in plan making to meet other development needs, notably residential and employment needs, as those are the most sustainable places for them. Such proposals need to be close to services so that occupants can clearly access them and to promote sustainable means of transport. This proposal, once operational, would be remotely controlled with no permanent employees on site. Visits to the site for the purpose of maintenance would be occasional, and therefore the location outside a service village does not have the same implications for sustainability as housing or employment, for example. With regard to Greenbelt, the proposed BESS would constitute inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. The proposal would result in encroachment into the countryside and result in a loss of openness within the Greenbelt. In line with the NPPF, substantial weight is given to this harm to the Greenbelt. Very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the Greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm resulting from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. Development would make a significant contribution to energy security by allowing surplus electricity from the grid to be stored and used when it is most needed. Government policy states that storage is needed to avoid waste, reduce the costs of electricity system and increase reliability. This national policy is apportioned substantial weight. The development would also offer an uplift in biodiversity. National policy advises that developments should be located where impacts are or can be made acceptable. It is considered that the location of the proposed development, together with the existing and proposed landscaping, would reduce the impact on the Greenbelt to a limited degree of harm in the medium to long term. Additionally, whilst the proposed development would be located at the site for a number of years, it is reversible and capable of being removed from the site. The removal of the equipment and the remediation of the site following decommissioning or the use ceasing can be secured via condition. The proposal incorporates new tree planting, an additional 83 metres of hedgerow and enhanced species grassland. Following consultation with landscape character specialists and the council's ecologist, it is considered that the development would not detrimentally impact upon the landscape of the area and would enhance biodiversity. The nearest residential properties are situated around 350 metres to the west of the site. No neighbour objections have been received and no issues raised by environmental health regarding noise impacts. Subject to conditions to restrict noise levels to those specified in the submitted documents and in accordance with the British standard. South Staffordshire Fire Service have been consulted and following a submission of a checklist providing further information, including a 240,000 litre water tank. That's shown on the site plan there in blue. You can see there, that's about 1.5 metres in height. And also a split access. The fire service do not raise any objections to the proposal. The Highways Authority do not object to the proposals, subject to conditions that a conditional survey of the local highway route proposed shall be undertaken with before and after surveys. Also management of details relating to vehicles during construction, maintaining visibility displays, allowing operation of the sites only once the site access is completed. The local flood authority were consulted on a revised drainage strategy and raised no objection, subject to conditions to prevent flooding by ensuring the satisfactory storage and disposal of surface water from the site. The application site comprises part of the extensive beer garden and paddock associated with Hollybush Inn pub, which is under the same ownership as the application site. The building has been unused for almost 5 years and is now in a poor state of repair. There is no extant planning permission associated with the building, and the building is considered unviable as a pub, as demonstrated through a previous application. As a result, the impact of this proposal on the Hollybush Inn as a pub is given little weight in determination of this application. Taking all factors into consideration, including public representations and consultee comments, wider environmental benefits of the development in the context of the government's national strategy for decarbonising the country's energy system and also the uplift in biodiversity are considered to clearly outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt, which is limited. Consequently, the very special circumstances necessary to justify the proposal do exist, and the scheme is in accordance with the development plan and provisions of the NPPF. On that basis, approval is recommended, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Next, I would go to the local member. That local member is Councillor Reid, who has declared an interest, so he won't take part in this debate. Members, any of? Yes, sorry, the speaker, of course. We've got a speaker speaking against. It's Mrs. Phillips. Would you go to the rostrum, please? Sorry for this confusion, but it's different printed on my list. So okay. Sorry, that was my fault. It's speaker for the application, Millie Bowen. Would you go to the list? My apologies for that confusion.
Good evening, Chair and members. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in support of this application. My name is Millie Bowen. I am speaking today for the applicant REPD, for whom I work as a planning manager. REPD was founded in 2013 and is an experienced developer of renewable and low carbon energy projects in the UK. We pride ourselves on being a responsible developer who engages with local planning authorities and communities. In September 2022, we met South Staffordshire Council planning officers to discuss the proposal as part of the Council's formal pre-application engagement process. In June 2023, while we were preparing the application, we sent letters to local residents inviting them to share their views on the application by email and telephone. No neighbour objections were received. We have been engaging with Treacle and Seaston Parish Council since early 2023. REPD has an internal policy to offer community benefits locally after a decision has been made by the local planning authority. We have agreed to discuss community benefits for Treacle and Seaston Parish Council if planning permission is granted. We are grateful to have had such a strong level of engagement with the parish. The proposed battery energy storage system, BESS, will enable energy from renewables like solar and wind to be stored and then released when the power is needed most. It will provide a vital element of infrastructure that will support the use of intermittent renewable energy, allowing renewable power to be utilised when it would otherwise be wasted. It will contribute to energy security. Hollybush BESS will impact on a local level through its connection to the Penn Circuit, which is part of the North Wales and Midlands region. The region has a significant volume of fossil fuel generation, around 14 gigawatts. Power plant closures are set to occur in the Midlands, with demand set to remain fairly high. Thus, to avoid network constraints during power plant closures, growth for power storage is required. This region relies on reactive compensation, which is based far away and is therefore not very effective. In the summer months, due to low demand and the long transmission lines in the region, some areas experience high voltage. Closures of fossil fuel generation in the region could make it increasingly challenging to manage the region's voltage, which could result in local outages. We have had an offer from NGED to connect to the local network in 2026, which will help support smooth and imminent transition for the required power plant closures. In summary, Hollybush BESS will benefit the local and regional electricity network. Alongside this, there is strong local and national policy support for BESS development. You will be familiar with NPPF advice to support renewable and low carbon energy, the Staffordshire Climate Change Final Report, and South Staffordshire Council's topic paper, to name a few. In relation to Greenbelt, we note that the scheme has been subject to rigorous assessment in relation to Greenbelt considerations. The methodology has been fully detailed in the officer's report, and the conclusion is reached that very special circumstances have been demonstrated and the scheme should be supported, hence the recommendation for approval. The site comprises a former beer garden that has no recent history of agricultural use. The proposed development is temporary and reversible. After decommissioning, all equipment will be removed with the benefits of the landscaping scheme prevailing. A lot of technical work has gone into the application before you today, since we commenced our pre-application discussions in 2022. We have assessed various special circumstances to build a robust case as to why planning permission should be granted for this particular proposal. We have devised a considerate design to ensure the development will be acceptable in relation to residential and recreational amenity. Excuse me. We have assessed highway impacts and conclude highway safety would not be compromised. Pardon me. We have designed a landscape scheme that provides significant biodiversity benefits. We have been liaising with Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service since April 2023. We had numerous meetings with Group Manager based in Stafford Fire Station, a Fire Safety Inspecting Officer based in Cannock Community Fire Station, and members of the Central Prevent and Protect team based in Stone Headquarters. We incorporated feedback and improved the design to meet the fire services expectations. We ask that you support your officer's recommendation for approval of the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I was going to give you extra time because of the coughing, but thanks for finishing within the 5 minutes. Thank you. Right, so as I was saying earlier, the local member is Councillor Reid. He's not available because he's declared an interest. So it's over to you, members. Anybody wish to speak on this application? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. The Highways Authority do identify there's been a couple of vehicle accidents at that junction, and they are just a bit concerned, but it does state Highways Authority construction vehicle access require highway works agreement. Has that agreement been started or not yet? Because they do state it needs to be done before the planning application is what's named, and it does state that.
Tom.
I can help there, Chair. What happens is that when the planning application is approved by this committee, then discussions actually start with the Highway Authority, and it's ordinarily an agreement under section 278 of the Act, where the developer will then be required to liaise with the Highway Authority, and all the provisions of the highway safety requirements will be set out in that agreement. And that agreement does contain a very clear provision that no development is to commence until the highway works have been carried out.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other members wish to speak? No? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chairman. You'll be pleased to know I won't be speaking for too long because I have the same issue as Millie, so I don't want to start choking. I can't really see there's anything to recommend any other decision apart from the decision from our officer. As you know, I tend to have views on these types of projects, but I noticed that Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service have no problems at all with it. So I think this is possibly one location that's probably ideal for this sort of installation. My only regret is that we're losing a pub and we're gaining a best, but there you go, that's life.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Councillor Barrow.
Sorry.
It's you. Thank you. Just a question, really. There is a building that was the original pub right on the road. And it obviously very derelict. What's going to happen to this building now?
The short answer is we don't know. But as I said, I think it says in the report, it's obviously been in use as a pub for many years. It's been under various tenants which haven't made a success of it. And then I think it became a restaurant, an Indian restaurant, and that closed down early 2020. That was actually pre-COVID as well, that closed. So it has been vacant since then. But yeah, we haven't had any information in terms of the application over that. It is outside of the actual application site. But yes, we don't have any information on what that's going to happen there.
It's just that if it would not be possible to live in it or use it for any other building because it would be so close to the you know, the plans at the back. I'm just a bit concerned that it stands there derelict, and as I say, if it would be used for other purposes. It was very nice actually as an Indian restaurant, I have to say, and it just gives me some concerns.
Yes, I mean it doesn't, unfortunately, because it's outside the application site, and it's existing, its previous use as a pub, and it's seen as unviable now, and there isn't any certainty over what's going to happen next with that. So we can't really consider that as part of this planning application, unfortunately.
If I can add a point, this isn't part of this application, but if the pub, we had no representations from the community, nobody's attempted to asset list it, that would have been considered, but it is a separate entity. It's not something we can consider with this application. Any other members wish to speak? Ellie.
Good question. Is there anything in the conditions regarding, because the batteries don't last for a lifetime, there's a 10-year life, that when they do come to change those batteries, they done during the day and not during the night and stuff like that as a condition?
Tom?
Yeah, sorry, just discussed it. I think it's difficult to condition that essentially because it doesn't require planning permission in itself. Batteries would be constructed on the site. I imagine it's the same for this application as previous BESS applications, where when the batteries are changed, that it's not the entire container that's changed. They're sort of slotted in, lots of mini kind of batteries, and that way. So I wouldn't envisage issues with that. But yeah, it's not something that we think can be conditioned.
Yep.
I have dealt with appeals on these and with Tom, and it was recommended that sort of condition could be put on a best condition site because it stops any aggravation between any local residents being disturbed during the night.
Yeah, this one is slightly different in as far as there's not very many residential properties in the vicinity. I take your point because yeah, if they were to be changed during the night time, for example, that could be a problem. But because what we're dealing with here is direct replacement, so one battery in, one battery out, however that might be done, that's going to be a difficult condition. We've had no concerns for environmental health in terms of noise, but I think the individual case on its own merits is that this one is 350 metres from many other residential properties, so it wouldn't be an overriding concern in terms of noise and disturbance. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments? Councillor Arpalis.
Just a comment. I said a second Councillor Steele's comments around some of the frustrations that we kind of have with these storage facilities. Yet another one in our rural area, but obviously our hands are often tied with these applications due to the national planning framework and stuff. What I would say is the silver lining is, I guess this application is on land that it isn't. Well, it was agricultural land, but it hasn't been for some time. So I think when we sort of look towards and look in the future at other storage facilities, maybe this one should be like the gold standard, and we should maybe refer back to this in the future. And just to make those comments on record, really.
Thank you. Any other comments, members? No. I go therefore to the recommendation from the officers. The recommendation is for approval. Can I have a show of hands for approval, please? Any against? Was unanimous. Any abstentions? No, because it was unanimous. Thank you. It's therefore the application is approved. Thank you. Right, we now go to the third item on the agenda. Sorry. Sorry, we need to bring the other councillor back into the room. Thank you, Councillor Reid. I nearly kicked off without you, but saved the day. Right. Next item then is item 3, which is agenda item application number 2400610 FUL 65 Long Lane, Newtown, Walsall. And over to you, Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to land to the rear of the existing bungalow fronting Long Lane, which extends across the rear of 61 and 63 Long Lane and adjoins the boundary of 59A. The existing dwelling is in its immediate original domestic curtilage fall within the local plan defined settlement boundary of Newtown. The land to the rear, where the development is proposed, is outside the settlement boundary and located within the green belt. The area for the proposal is mostly block paved with a grassed area. There is already a mobile home on the site, adjacent to the rear fence of number 63, and along with a tourer and a motorhome. The boundary treatments comprise of low walls and fences. Planning permission is sought for 2 gypsy traveller pitches, one on a permanent basis and the other on a temporary basis. The occupants are the 2 sons of Mr. Evans Senior, who occupies the bungalow with his wife and daughter. The permanent pitch would be for Mr. Tom Evans Jr., who is married and has 2 young children, aged 1 and 3, and these would be cited in pitch 1. And the temporary 3-year permission would be for William Evans, cited in pitch 2. Each pitch would have a mobile home, a day room, and a tourer. A hedgerow is to be planted along the rear of the site behind the existing brick wall to delineate the boundary of the application site. During the application, amended plans have been received to reduce the size and the site reconfiguration and the site layout, which includes the reposition of the mobile home away from the fence line with number 63. The application site is within the green belt, and the proposed use of the site for gypsy traveller pitches does not fall under any of the exceptions listed as acceptable development in the green belt under either policy GB1 of the core strategy or paragraphs 154 or 155 of the NPPF, and thus is inappropriate development. As such, very special circumstances case needs to be progressed. The proposal will undoubtedly have an adverse impact on the openness of the greenbelt, both spatially and visually to a degree. Some encroachment would also occur. In terms of the level of harm caused, this is considered to be on the lower end of the scale. To the east of the site, there is a gradual progression of the built-up features into the greenbelt, caused by the varying degree and locations of outbuildings and other structures, all appearing to be incidental to the residential dwelling houses. The extent of the application site is similar to the garden, which is hard surfaced at number 59A Long Lane. With this blurring of the green belt edge and the presence of the caravans proposed would only have a limited effect on the openness of the green belt in spatial terms. In terms of visual impact, given the low height of the boundary treatment, the proposed hedge the amended layout with the mobile home of pitch 1 being placed next to the building of 59A and the day rooms in line with the edge of the built form to 59A. The proposed use would have a moderate impact on openness in visual terms. And this is supported by the mobile home for pitch 2 being temporary, which would be viewed in line with the field shelters of the adjoining paddocks. In terms of very special circumstances, the applicants have presented a case for personal circumstances as to why they need to live on the site that relate to health conditions, access to education and healthcare which would be in the best interest of the children. These matters count in favour of the proposal and accord with the aims of the relevant policy to enable the provision of sustainable accommodation from which travellers can access education, health, welfare and employment infrastructure. Members will be aware of the need for gypsy traveller accommodation in the district. Given the significant unmet need, the council need to consider windfall sites carefully, as is the policy position, and look favourably on those application sites that contribute to the unmet need. The present application is noted would not cause any significant harm to the openness of the Greenbelt, either spatially or visually, given the extent of the neighbouring development and built-up form, and a case for personal circumstances has been made on health and medical grounds. It's therefore considered that very special circumstances have clearly been demonstrated in the application for a permanent and a temporary pitch. Turning to neighbouring amenity, the amended layout is considered to have addressed initial concerns raised by neighbouring occupiers and is now considered acceptable in terms of noise, disturbance, as well as outlook and daylight. And in terms of the relevant planning policy for gypsy traveller accommodation, all the relevant elements are considered to have been addressed, as outlined in the officer report, and there are no objections from the police to the proposed scheme. Just going to go through the plans, as you can see them in front of you. So what you've got here on the left-hand side is the existing layout, and what is here on the right-hand side is the proposed layout. So the proposed layout shows the two pitches located to the east and the west of the site. So that's relocated from the current location, which is here, which is an area shown for car parking. We've got a hedgerow reinstated here, and the loss of this area of parking, that is going to be reinstated into paddock. And this plan shows the aerial photographs of the area. So this is the area that will be removed as part of the proposal here, which is a rear parking area. And the pitches will be located in this area here, access from the highways to the side. These two pictures show the existing situation on the site with the currently located caravan there and the tourer pitch and the motorhome. And then we've got a view of the area that will be returned to paddock, which is this parking area here, and this grassed area will be maintained. A new hedgerow will be reinstated. And finally, this is a view looking southwest. So this is from the rear of the site, looking back towards the neighbouring property. The application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellen. We have one speaker speaking against, which is Mrs. Anne Phillips. Could you go to the rostrum, please? Thank you. Mrs. Phillips, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, I'm the representative for the immediate neighbours and the residential community in Long Lane. And I'm speaking due to the stress and the impact suffered by those residents. That's why I'm doing this, from this and previous applications. It's affecting their health and well-being. The application is proposed in Greenbelt that was originally orchard, and the landscape has been changed substantially by the applicant. The NPPF states that no traveller site should be sited on Greenbelt, and we believe that the council has already discounted Long Lane for further development. There are already sites in Long Lane. The applicant cited the presence of pigeon lofts and dog kennels previously, and therefore said that the area was brownfield, but it doesn't change the status of the land just because those were there. Those were temporary structures. The application uses old aerial photographs that it calls existing site and does not disclose the works that have already been undertaken, substantial hard standing, the septic tank and the static caravan. The static is a permanent fixture used as a living dwelling, not for ancillary use. Its permission was refused in a previous application, and it's my understanding that the enforcement order has not yet been finalised on that. We believe that this application should not have been accepted in the first place. It's inappropriate that the works already carried out show a presumption that the permission will be granted and a disregard for the previous planning decisions. We don't want this to set a precedent. These permanent structures will affect the adjacent residents, particularly at 61 and 63. They are to the side and at the end of their gardens. There isn't much detail there about what will the planting that would reduce the visual impact and the effect on the environment, or how to reduce the privacy issues. These are substantial buildings. The application states there's no facilities for, or very few, in South Staffordshire to accommodate traveller policy. This is irrelevant. This is a permanent pitch. It's not a temporary site for transient visitors. There are no special circumstances, as we can see. The site doesn't meet highway standards for the access. It's a shared drive with existing buildings restricting the width. We believe there's a duty of care in the Equalities Act to ensure that the access is safe and inclusive. The application lies within a larger area that might be identified for further development, and we don't want this. In view of the genuine planning policy and highway guidance, we ask the members of this committee to refuse the application and enforce the removal of the works that already have been done.
Okay, finished. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mrs. Phillips. We now have a speaker speaking for the proposition, Matt Design Limited. Could you go to the rostrum, please? You also have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Mike Carr from Matt Design Limited. I've spoken before at committee probably 2 or 3 months ago, and a lot of the issues that have been highlighted and raised in the officer reports, I think you'll have heard that most of those before in terms of what as a bundle are very special circumstances. The need, lack of alternative provision, and impact on the green belt all need to be balanced, and I think the officer report is very, very, very detailed in terms of how it's set up, how each individual element and the group of elements which make up very special circumstances have been put together and balanced towards the personal needs and the needs for gypsies and travellers that have been deficient for quite a while in South Staffordshire Borough. I think the approach taken by officers is very, very positive, and it links itself to the positive approach that the new local plan is taking towards traveller provision in South Staffordshire. This is a windfall site, and as the planning manager said, this is a site that needs to be considered very carefully in terms of what it will give. Now, what it will give is family support. It's in the best interest of the child and the long-term health of the families. It will also allow Mr. Evans Senior's children to look after him. He's got some serious medical conditions that need attention. That's all in the report. What I would ask members to just review is the plans that were submitted and the aerial photographs in terms of the level of harm that some of the residents suggest there might be. When you look at that visually, spatially, in any other way, you can see how this development site currently and compares to the surrounding area. You'd find it difficult to break down which is which. There are so many outbuildings, caravans, other structures that have been developed over time. So the development proposed isn't unsympathetic, it's not uncharacteristic, and the level of harm caused is minimal. I think the officer used moderate, but either way, our view is that the very special circumstances that have been put together, put in detail into the officer report, clearly outweigh the harm to the openness of the green belt in this particular circumstance, and we would ask members to approve the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, we go to the local member first, which is Councillor Steele. Do you want to speak? Just change the microphone. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Initially, I had serious reservations regarding this site. But subsequently, I did have a meeting with officers, and I was reasonably satisfied with the outcome of that meeting. But I do reserve my right to speak later after the debate. Thank you.
Members, anybody wish to speak? Councillor Kelly.
Chair, can I just ask first the officer to zoom in a bit on the site so we can see a clearer picture of the site, please?
Sorry, I wasn't sure if I could do that, so bear with me.
Thank you. And the other point is there's already, as some photos have already shown, there's caravans already on there. Have they had all previous planning? So is this a extra total onto that, or is it going to be restricted to that single number? Will it be, in other words, furthermore come further on down the line?
Helen.
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair. Does that help? Now, can you see that a bit clearer? Sorry. So yeah, this is the area here, as you can see my cursor, where the 2 pitches will go. So what you can see on site at the moment is a static caravan and a tourer. So that constitutes 1 pitch, as does a recreational block. So that this application is part retrospective because we've got an element of it there already. But what we're looking at today is to make one of those permanent and a temporary pitch for 3 years. So if members were minded to approve, there would be 2 static caravans, 2 tourers and 2 recreational blocks there, but they would be on one of those pitches would be on a temporary basis. So you are correct in that there's an element of retrospective here.
Thank you, Chair. And just to clarify, the state of vehicle movement, as we know, there's going to be transit vans and mobile home type things. Will there be that as well?
Yeah, so in terms of the nature of the development, some of that is already there, as you can imagine, and you can see from the photos that we've presented this evening. There will be alternatives obviously located and delivered to the site, but the Highways Authority have reviewed the scheme in full and have are minded to approve and do not object to the scheme. So in terms of the access and the egress to the highway, that's been checked out and that is fine. And the other thing to point out is the caravan in its existing location. That's not where we're minded to approve. We're moving it away from the boundary here where it's located at the moment to one being located here against the backdrop of this larger building there, and another one here which is away from the residential properties. We weren't comfortable with where it is at the moment and where it's currently sited. So one of the conditions, as you will read, is to make sure that that is moved into the newly approved location, and that will be monitored through the planning enforcement team.
Yes, and just to clarify, it's a shared drive access.
Can you see that there? Is that clearer? So yeah, this is the access point. So there's an element of shared nature to that in terms of the access point, and these neighbouring properties here, so you've got 2 properties here, that's their rear garden area. This one kind of sweeps around behind those, so these are sat in isolation, and then that's also access to this part of the site which will be removed as part of this application and reinstated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Also, are officers aware of if work has already been undertaken, and if so, what's the nature of that?
Yes, so we're aware that there's ongoing works on the site. Some of the works that have been undertaken are looking to be regularised as part of this recommendation to approve this evening. There have been other works that have been undertaken and there's been live enforcement action taken as a result. So it's a site that the enforcement team are live to, and a lot of the issues that have been ongoing there look to be addressed through the potential approval of this application, and that's what some of the conditions relate to. So that, combined with active monitoring from the enforcement team, because of the live nature of some of the breaches of planning control, would be heavily monitored should members be minded to approve. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Spruce.
Yeah, just a quick question around permitted development rights. If this was approved, what would that involve on a site like this? Because I'm thinking, obviously, if you had a property, you could extend to a certain point. How would this interact with the traveller site?
In terms of the Gypsy traveller pitches that are subject to this application, there's no permitted development that goes with those in isolation. Dwelling houses, as you know, do have some permitted development rights. A lot of these properties along Long Lane, though, have already been quite heavily extended. So whether any of those permitted development rights would remain would be each case on its merits. But in terms of your question, it would relate to the dwelling houses that front Long Lane rather than the pitches themselves to the rear. Thank you.
Councillor Harper-Harris.
You mentioned this this application addresses some of the live action. What does it not address?
In terms of what's been going on at the site, there's the caravans and tourer pitches that you can see in the photographs. There's also, let me just move this, bear with, this area is unauthorised, and this hard standing that's been put in place here, that's been subject to further enforcement action and an enforcement notice. So that would remain ongoing, irrespective of any approval tonight, but this also does look to remove that as part of a planning condition because it's included. So it's kind of a double-edged thing really, because the situation with the enforcement notice would remain live and we would continue to progress that if it was necessary, but we've also got a condition that would remove this. So it kind of overlaps in terms of what the existing enforcement notice looks to secure, plus what the application is trying to achieve through planning condition.
There are no other enforcement things related to any other part of the site on that.
Sorry, in terms of the current application site itself, no, they're the outstanding matters.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? No, I'll go back to Councillor Steele if you wish to wind up.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mentioned the quite grave concerns that I had initially. This concerns the planning and enforcement history of the site. If this application is approved tonight, it will somewhat tidy up this situation. Also, concerns regarding the close proximity of the other site at 59A. The residents of 61 and 63 are surrounded on both sides and to the rear of their properties by these two sites, which is obviously exists, and this application won't change that at all, but it will tidy up. For instance, there's a mention of a new septic tank. My understanding is that the new one is to replace the original one, which shouldn't have been installed in the first place. Is that correct? That was an enforcement action as well.
Yeah, so there was a septic tank that was installed that wasn't subject to any planning control, and what is proposed as part of this one is to upgrade that to the relevant standard. So yeah, so there is a septic tank proposed as part of this as well, but not in addition to what's there, as a replacement to what's there.
Yeah, but you see my point. The ones that's there shouldn't be there, but we're putting it right by putting a bigger one there. Correct?
The one that's going in here is the appropriate size for what's proposed. Yeah, that's correct.
I think you know what I mean. I have also one concern at 1.2.3, the temporary 3-year permission would be for William Evans at pitch 2. My question is, what happens after 3 years as it's temporary for 3 years? Sorry.
Yeah, so the way that the recommendation is phrased is there's a permanent pitch would get permanent consent, and after 3 years, the removal of that pitch would be expected and is subject to a condition. So it's either at 3 years, or if the occupier of that particular pitch is no longer residing there, then all of the paraphernalia associated with that pitch would be removed. If that pitch was still there after 3 years, it would then become a breach of planning control, and we would look to take enforcement action, or you may see a further application after that. But we can't obviously predict what might happen with that. But it is only a temporary consent for that one pitch.
I thought that was one of the special circumstances to allow it. The fact that the son needs to be on the same site as his parents. So after 3 years, he may have to move and find somewhere else. That doesn't seem a proper conclusion. So I just find that strange.
Yeah, the reason that the one pitch is temporary rather than permanent is that the medical needs of the individual occupying that particular pitch hopefully will be resolved over that time period, so that particular individual doesn't need a permanent pitch. The medical condition that person is subject to they will recover from. So there's no need for us to provide a permanent pitch on that basis. That's why it's temporary. Hopefully there will be a recovery.
Well, I can sum up and say that whereas I have sympathy for the occupants of 61 and 63, I do think that this will be an improvement to the site overall. And as we know, there is a demand in the area. This is going some way, only minor, I know, to looking into that situation. So I'm reasonably happy now. Thank you.
Thank you, members. We move to the vote. The recommendation from our officers is to approve this application. All those in favour of approval, please show. Those against? And are there any abstentions? Therefore, the recommendation is approved. Thank you.